Hello, welcome to Ray-ality TV. I'm Raymond Bakari, and today I'm joined by the Rhode Island GOP Chairwoman, Cienki. Ms. Cienki, how are you today?
Good morning. Good, Ray. How are you?
I'm doing great, and it's good to have you on the show again. A lot of different issues will be present going into the 2022 election cycle, especially amongst Republican voters. What are some of the top issues the party, Rhode Island GOP, will focus on heading into 2022?
Certainly, I think one of the big issues has to be school choice. We've seen the devastating impact of 2 years of our response to the pandemic with school closures, distance learning. So there's been a huge learning loss. We know that. And we even see that now with Omicron, which appears to be a less virulent form of the virus. And yet you have teachers union pushing for distance learning, pushing for N95 masks on children. So there's a huge amount of frustration among parents. So we always believe that the money should follow the child, and that parents should have a choice. We've been saying that for years, and that's based upon the testing results and the Johns Hopkins report about Providence, that for more than 25 years, we've known that the students there are not up to grade level in reading and in math. There are parents and huge waiting lists for charter schools. Let the parents have a choice. So we always believe that the money should follow the child, and that we should have more opportunities for school choice. So that is going to be a huge issue. The other thing is certainly the cost of living here. And the cost of doing business here. We know through the pandemic that many small businesses had to close. They couldn't survive. So what are our business regulations in the state that are preventing small businesses from thriving? And certainly the rate of inflation, just to be able to live here. We talk about affordable housing. Well, is it the lack of housing or is it the cost of actually living in the house? And we see that all the time, that people cannot heat their homes. They cannot provide electricity because the cost up here is astronomical. Over the course of 10 years, Ray, we really have not grown our population that significantly. Why? This is such a beautiful state. We have so many wonderful storied history here. We have a beautiful landscape. We have an opportunity to be, the star of the country because we are so small and can get things done. But that's not happening. And it's certainly not happening at the General Assembly. And it is definitely not happening from our current governor.
While still talking about 2022, nationally, it may end up being a red wave year due to historical precedent since the Democrats are currently in control on the federal government. And with President Biden's approval rating kind of on the decline in the low 40s last time I had checked, and last two wave years that were good for Republicans, which were 2010 and 2014, saw close elections in Rhode Island at the gubernatorial level and a couple pickups in the General Assembly. How confident are you that 2022 could see gains for the Republican Party in the state?
Yeah, you're right. Historically, midterms, we always do better. Typically, what happens during a presidential year is Republicans will lose seats. That didn't even happen in 2022. We did not lose seats. We actually picked up seats. So I am very confident that we can actually pick up some more seats. We have a lot of interest in the gubernatorial race, but I certainly truly believe that the Attorney General's race is the most significant because the Attorney General has subpoena power, and certainly the Secretary of State. That is an important role. And the Secretary of State's office goes well beyond elections. You have a lot to do with the small businesses and corporations. We have a huge celebration coming up in 2026, the 250th year of the birth of this country. So there's a lot that the Secretary of State can do. So that's a significant race. But I do have several people interested in the Democratic governor, in the governor's race. We have 6 Democratic candidates already. We're going to let them beat each other up. Our primary is late here. It's in September. So we're going to let the Democrats spend money, and our candidates are behind the scenes working. There are 113 seats up, 15 of which are Republicans. I believe most of the Republicans or all of them are going to be running for re-election. And we've got great interest in running. So anybody that's interested, thinking about running, we will help you. We will train you. We start our training classes probably in March after redistricting is done and set. And, you know, come join us. There's a huge amount of interest, certainly in school committees. What is happening in school committees? There's lots of parents that are angry. So school committee, town council, general assembly, we're getting a lot of interest there.
You mentioned the General Assembly a little bit toward the end of that answer, and I know there's like a multi-year plan to pick up General Assembly seats for the Republicans, the Republican Party in the state. How many seats do you see as possible flips from blue to red next year, or this year, I should say?
We have targeted 33 representative seats and 18 Senate seats that, based upon the data that we're looking at, they have a good chance. If we get some good candidates there and they work hard, you know, it's always, you got to walk your district and put the effort in. If we have good candidates that put the effort in, we believe that we can pull off some of those seats and take some back. But those are the targeted seats, 33 rep seats, 18 Senate seats that we think we can win. That doesn't mean that somebody that doesn't live in that district cannot go after one of the other seats. I mean, look, we did take out the speaker last time. Who's to say that Joe Shikarchi, people are not frustrated with him, and we might have a candidate that runs against him, and we can take him out. And certainly the Senate president, don't get comfortable. Don't get comfortable. I don't think any Democratic rep should feel comfortable going into 2022 because this has not been a good year. People are frustrated. People cannot afford to live here. The frustration level is at an all-time high.
Are there any specific districts on that target list that you don't mind sharing? I know, for example, Marie Hopkins recently announced she's running in District 21, which that is part of Warwick, if I have that correct.
Yes, that's part of Warwick. Marie is an outstanding candidate. You know, she's a Brown University graduate. She went back to school at URI and she got her nursing degree. She's a mom. She's, you know, very concerned about healthcare and certainly education, and she is going to work. She is out there. She's already announced, and we're very excited about her candidacy. You know, we have a young man, John Lugo, he's a Providence police officer. He's already indicated that he wants to run for lieutenant governor. He's got a great history. You should get him on your show. He certainly is very interested, and I know that he will work hard. And then there are a number of other districts. We've got a young man up in the Cumberland area that, you know, based upon the final redistricting, we'll know which seat he's going to run for, Alex Rondo. And I think that he will work hard. Certainly, Brian Rea, who ran last time against Bernie Hawkins and only lost by 42 votes, he'll be running again. And Frank Ritchie will be running again. They came very close last time, and they've committed to running again. And that may be true with some of the other candidates that came very close. And now that they've been through a cycle, they'll run again.
And some of those close elections, actually, it segues into the next topic I had in mind. I wanted to talk about. There were elections that at one point when the in-person vote came in, you seen like the Republican up, and then when the mail ballots came in, it switch to the other way. And this creates an interesting dialogue about mail-in ballots. But the way I want to ask about it is something that I noticed the Providence GOP co-chairs have been doing, Dave Talon and William Ritchie. They have an effective mail-in ballot strategy in Providence that's helped elect more conservative Democrats like Rep. Perez in District 13 and Councilman Vargas here in Ward 15 in Providence. And they've talked about how they plan to utilize that more in 2022. Is there a plan to try to do like an effective mail-in ballot operation statewide for 2022?
Yes, and we always talk about that with our candidates when we go through training. You know, we tell them to look at exactly who used mail ballots. It didn't surprise us. You know, we knew what was going to happen on election night, and we told all of our candidates, you'll have the in-person voting results first, then you will have the early absentee ballot votes come in, and last will be the mail ballot drop. Well, based upon, again, the data that we saw, the mail ballots were overwhelmingly used by Democrats. So we knew that there was a certain percentage points that our candidates had to be at in order to have a fighting chance and win, despite the overwhelmingly Democratic mail-in ballots. So, even though they were dropped early in the morning, we sat down with our candidates and explained how the process was going to work. We also encourage people in 2022, if you don't like the way the election was run, get involved. You can be a poll watcher. You can sit there and watch the process. The more eyes on the process, the better it is. But we do tell all of our candidates, look at who got mail ballots. 2022 was an anomaly. More people used it than ever before, but we've seen with the special elections that we're back down to about 10%. 10% of people use it, and that can switch an election. So you better make sure that you go after those ballots. People that have historically used mail ballots in 2016 and 2018, you better make contact with them, make sure that they have an absentee ballot, and then go chase them. It's a push and a chase. And we tell all of our candidates to do that. Because as you can see with Brian Ray of 42 votes, you make sure you push and chase those mail ballots, you can win an election.
While on the topic of strategies, in Virginia this past November, the GOP did an interesting strategy where they didn't fully embrace Trump, but they also didn't condemn him at the same time. And they focused on a lot more local issues. This won over suburban voters and independents that kind of turned away from the party starting from 2018 onward. Does the party plan to mimic a similar strategy that was done in Virginia and New Jersey this past November?
Yeah, I know the Democrats would like to obsess over President Trump, but quite frankly, he's not the president anymore. We saw the data. We know that the suburban women did not vote for President Trump this time. They didn't like the mean tweets. I'm sure that they certainly don't like the price of oil now. I'm certain that they go into the supermarket and they see bare shelves Biden all over the place. I'm sure that they don't like the fact that we have open borders on the South and we're being influxed. There's no immigration policy here. And that goes back to Congress. Why are they not enacting? They see the rise of aggression from China and Russia. So you want to focus on who's president now? It's Joe Biden and it's Kamala Harris, who's the vice president. So President Trump is an ex-president. Let's focus in on what's going on now. And we're going to focus on where we are now, where we have been for the past year. What's our response to the pandemic? Where are the tests that people want? So we're ready to battle on that even ground and say, a year ago, 2 years ago, what was the price of gas? What's it now? It's inching upwards of $4. Can you afford any more of Democratic control? And particularly in Rhode Island, it's a one-party state. The Republicans can't do a lot unless we grow our numbers in the General Assembly. So that's what we intend on doing in 2022.
There was a poll that had talked about the kind of Republican they want to see run for governor of Rhode Islanders, I should say. It was in a Providence Journal article recently where they want a more moderate, pragmatic Republican. That's what they're more open to. And that's what some Republicans who wanted leader Filippi to run were seeing in his potential candidacy. And you notice it where in the late 80s, early 90s, Republicans were dominating, with the Republicans that were more moderate, kind of like a Rockefeller Republican, if you will, like John Chafee, Claudine Schneider, for example. How come the GOP doesn't adopt those similar ideas and bring back the Rockefeller Republican style that polls well amongst Rhode Islanders and has a history of showing wins?
It's a daunting task to run for governor. It takes a lot of time, effort, and energy. I think that I want everybody to hang on. We will have a governor candidate soon. And, I'm sure that people will be pleased that it's someone that is willing to work and get things done for the average Rhode Islander. And that's what we're looking for. I know people look towards Massachusetts. Charlie Baker has done a good job in Massachusetts. He's not running again for re-election. So, we will find somebody, or we have people that are willing to work and get things done for the average Rhode Islander. Just look, we are always at the bottom of the list. And maybe Dan McKee should thank the New Mexico governor, because Alec came out, the legislative council, and he's 49th worst governor in the country, only to be outdone by the Democratic governor in New Mexico. So we are not headed in the right direction. People, were frustrated with Gina Raimondo, and she left and went to Washington, but they are not happy with Dan McKee. So we will provide a good alternative to any of the Democrats that are running.
Speaking of the governor's race, it's interesting because around this time for the last two cycles, we had known who the Republican candidate was. For this time around, it's been a little tricky. I know you said you have candidates who are interested in. For a while, it was sounding like Leader Filippi. I know he had talked to consultants about possibly doing it. There's now, since former Cranston, Maryland Fung may run for treasurer, he's off that list, and you're not really hearing interest from like former candidates like Ken Block and David Darlington. He still hasn't formally announced or really taken up any media yet. How come it's harder to find a candidate in what's supposed to be a better year for the GOP than in 2018, for example?
Again, it's a huge task to run for governor, and we know that there are 6 Democratic candidates. And again, the strategy will be to let them beat each other up and spend all their money beating each other up. And whoever survives the Democratic primary is going to be battered and bloodied from that primary. And we will provide an alternative to that. And certainly there are people behind the scenes, although there has been no formal announcement yet, with the exception of Dave Darlington, who came out and said that he was interested in running. There are a lot of things going on behind the scenes. And shortly, we will announce. Remember that Don Kachiri never formally announced until May. And when John Robitaille ran, he also did not formally announce until the spring. That doesn't mean there aren't things going on behind the scenes, talking about raising money, putting together your consultants, your team. There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes.
Since we know it's not going to be Leader Filippi, I tried to see if it was maybe Rep. Newberry. That was my guess when everybody was playing the game of who's the Republican candidate. And I do want to bring this up because you said multiple times that it's an elected Republican that people know. Is that candidate you're referring to still in, or was that Leader Filippi? Who is that person still in?
No. And there's always the talk, when Leader Filippi was running, you hate to move chess pieces off the board. So you want to be able to keep as many chess pieces as you can. And he has done an outstanding job as minority leader. Certainly Senator Jessica De La Cruz is the whip over in the Senate, and she is becoming more vocal and doing a great job. You never want to move those pieces off the chessboard unless you have a farm team that can replace those people and do as an effective job. So as much as people are disappointed that Leader Filippi did not jump into the race, I'm not, because I think that he does such a great job as minority leader. I want him to stay there. I want him to be able to stay there and continue to do that job. He will provide the response to Governor McKee's State of the State. So I hope everybody tunes in and listens to what he has to say, because that will be our strategy going forward. This legislative cycle, what we're hoping to do, and our response to the inaction or the terrible direction that the Democrats are leading us.
Using that chess piece metaphor, or analogy, I should say, for a second, one chess piece that you had said if there's a farm table to replace is Cranston Mayor Ken Hopkins. These questions I had were going to be asked very differently until that announcement.
Yeah.
Well, it's not an announcement, I should say. Yesterday, they said it was reported that he's looking at the idea of running for governor, and he's going to take a short amount of time, he said in a press release, before he makes that decision. And Cranston, I mean, you'll most likely get a Republican mayor after that's a strong Republican stronghold in the state. Is that where it's heading with Mayor Ken Hopkins? Have you talked to him about this?
Actually, I haven't. That was a surprise to me. I have not yet talked to Ken, but I will sit down and talk to him. Exploratory is just that, exploratory. Ken is a recently elected mayor in Cranston. He is certainly learning the ropes how to be mayor in Cranston. So that will be part of the discussion. What do you hope to achieve? And certainly I think people do like him in Cranston. It is a Republican stronghold. So we will sit down. But again, an exploratory committee is just that. You explore all your options. You sit down with your Republican council members and you talk about a strategy moving forward. And at the end of the day, he may decide it's a huge financial impact. And maybe it's not his time yet. Doesn't mean in 4 years that he shouldn't jump in, because based upon what he has done in Cranston, much like Mayor Fung had a history in Cranston, he could highlight everything he did. And Ken, again, is new. So that will be part of the discussion.
So it sounds like there may be another Republican that you've talked to aside from Mayor Hopkins. So I'll just ask you like this, because I don't want to keep badgering at the governors, since we'll find out shortly.
Yeah.
This will be the last way I'll ask a governor's question until we have an announcement from a candidate. Will there 100% be a candidate other than David Darlington running for governor as a Republican?
I would say almost certainly yes.
Okay. And you had mentioned, I mean, it's like the game Who's Who. So you have candidates for both seats in Congress. You have Attorney Charles Calendar running for Attorney General. I hear like Joe Trillo may run for Lieutenant Governor. There's interesting background noise going on for the candidate situations. Treasurer, you're hearing Mayor Fung may run. We don't know yet. You said for Lieutenant Governor also John Lugo's running. I'm curious, what's the situation looking like for Secretary of State?
So I'm engaged in several conversations with different people that are interested in that office. And it just comes down to who will pull the trigger and run for that office. Again, I think it's an important office. I think it has to be someone that is not interested in higher office. It's kind of an office that does, background work, make sure that the elections run well. Their director of elections over there, Rob Rock, has been there for quite a number of years. He does a really good, outstanding job. He's been very helpful to us as we navigate the process. So, that we do some really good things here in Rhode Island. But then there's the other side, like what are we doing to help corporations? What are we doing to make sure that we're ready for 2026? There's a lot of other things in the background, the archives, there's so much more that a Secretary of State can accomplish. And I want people, it's not just about elections. That's a piece of it. But there's a larger piece of the Secretary of State's office. So we are talking to a number of people that understand that and understand it's not really a stepping stone to higher office. It really has to be somebody interested in doing the job of Secretary of State, that usually people don't even know who the Secretary of State is. It's just, it's a job that has to be filled, that is important, but not really a stepping stone for a higher office.
Is it going with the who's who kind of thing that Tyler Salk did with the governor's candidate? Is it somebody that we recognize or is an elected Republican? Or any of those people that you're talking to?
Maybe not. Again, I'm involved in so many conversations with so many different people that it may be somebody. And again, if it's an elected official, it may not be at the statewide level. It may be at a townwide level. And again, not moving chess pieces off the chessboard. You want to make sure that you have somebody to fill their spot.
Is that office for sure going to have a candidate, or is this still conversations in the background?
We're at the exploratory stage with a lot of these people, what it takes to run, do you have the support? Do you have the team behind you? And that's, we're very interested in that.
Earlier on in one of your answers, you had mentioned you're hearing a lot of interest from town council, school board elections, and I believe you had brought that up on an episode of Newsmakers, especially after the 2021 elections, where we saw Virginia go red with a clean sweep, and then New Jersey get very close, which was very surprising for a lot of political analysts. And there are areas in Rhode Island, like East Greenwich, for example, used to be strong Republican, now it's going more blue. Where in the state are you hearing the interest from potential candidates in these local elections?
A lot of interest in North Kingstown. They have, certainly there's a federal investigation about their previous basketball coach. So there's a lot of interest in North Kingstown. There's a lot of interest in Charahoe. There's a lot of interest in Westerly. So certainly the Western and southern side. Even in East Greenwich, there was a meeting last night. There was an extreme amount of frustration. So we're seeing parents that are really stepping up to the plate and saying, we are not happy with the direction. Certainly, even in a place like East Greenwich and Barrington, the test scores, I mean, it's very noticeable that there was a huge learning loss. The test scores have been terrible. And that is even pre-pandemic. Some of the test scores pre-pandemic. So I think parents are really starting to pay attention. And, maybe that's one of the good things that came out of COVID and the whole distance learning. Parents actually got to see what their children were being taught, and they are very frustrated. So I would have to say that more and more people, as we get closer to candidate filing, you'll see more and more people that are interested in definitely the school committee. Pay attention. The only place that we don't have candidates for is Providence, because they're not elected. They're appointed by the mayor. So people really have to pay attention to who is going to be your next mayor, and certainly lobby for more opportunity for school choice and stop this moratorium on charter schools. Give the parents the opportunity to choose where they want to go to, where their children should go to school.
Is there any interest in town council seats too, or is it just school committee?
No, definitely town council, because the town councils supply the money to the schools. There's been a huge influx of cash, COVID cash, that have come to a lot of these districts. How is this money being spent? Is it being spent appropriately? What is it being spent on? So there are a lot of those questions. And certainly because town councils do control the purse strings in towns, there's certainly a lot of interest in there. And I would say to people, if you're frustrated, get away from the keyboard, your computer keyboard and complaining online, and step up to the plate and run, because it's important. Your town's future, the future of the state, it's really, really important. We cannot be 49th and 50th in every metric over and over and over again and expect things to change. That's the definition of insanity. Keep doing the same things over and over again and expect a different result. No, you've got to step up to the plate. We will train you how to run for office. We will help you. We will hold your hand. And it really is a very satisfying, fulfilling thing. We want people that see things that are wrong, get involved in the conversation and run. Public service really is so satisfying. And I just wish more people would step up to the plate and say, I've had it. I can do this. I will donate my time, effort, and energy to make Rhode Island better.
Shifting away from 2022, at the top of the interview, there was a couple things you were being very critical for Governor McKee for. Can you explain for those watching what specific issues the party has with the governor's performance so far?
Well, I just think that he's made some really bad decisions. First of all, they came in and they signed that climate bill, to reduce carbon by 35% by 2030, to go to 45%. Carbon neutral, without looking at what our infrastructure is. You want to talk about what we can do for the climate? Well, let's look at, putting solar panels everywhere. Is that the solution? Well, when you put solar panels, you're either taking away farmland or forest land. Is that really the best solution? What can we do now to really effectuate change? Well, why not go look at your forests and look at the fire safety roads? They're not clear. So what would happen if there was a major forest fire over in the western side of the state? It would be devastating. Well, why are we not doing those little things? What about our access to the beach? We're the ocean state and people don't have public access. They're not being used correctly. So what are the little things that we can do? And are we relying just on wind and solar? Well, what about our electric grid? And who can afford an electric car? Do we have the infrastructure? If everybody on your block or everybody in your neighborhood decided to go out and buy an electric car, is it feasible here? I lived with an electric heat pump when I lived in the South. And let me tell you, when it got below 30 degrees, they didn't work. Well, we live in the Northeast. Is that a solution for us? So we look at things like that. Certainly, one thing I will applaud him for is he did veto that auto insurance bill, and it was just overrode by the General Assembly. Well, your insurance rates for cars are going to go up, yet another expense that is going to happen. So, we look at Dan McKee, and certainly we think that he is an employee now of the Rhode Island Department of Health. He is letting them dictate everything in the COVID response. And you again see long lines. There's not enough testing. What's our response to the pandemic? Going to distance learning, it just certainly devastates the children. And is he going to let the NEA and the AFT dictate education policy when he's the governor? We expect him to lead. And again, the metrics, small business. He said he was the small business governor. That's what he was known for. For 6 years, he went around and he talked to small businesses. And then he comes in and he signs this horrible deal, clean energy. And are the businesses actually going to be able to sustain that? And the answer is probably not. So yet another added expense to do business here, and business regulations. So those are the things that we worry about with Dan McKee. Certainly, are there illegal immigrants from the South? Is he accepting them? I know that John DePietro was down at Quonset. Who's coming into our state, and how are we able to afford an influx of people from outside the country? So there are lots of things that I think Dan McKee has missed the mark on.
Now shifting to non-political topics, because we did a lot of talking about politics in 2022. I always like to end in with non-political topics. I asked you the Rhode Island best known for one, but I got like two that are alternates, so I don't repeat questions. Do you have any hobbies that people watch this or watching this interview may not know about?
I'm an avid cyclist, and I'm certainly a voracious reader. I love to read about everything and anything. I'm actually reading a book by Bill Mittendorf, our former ambassador, who actually lives in Little Compton. The Heritage Foundation just sent me one of his books. It actually is about Barry Goldwater and the 1964 election. So reading still about politics, but I certainly love to read, and I am an avid cyclist. So those are two things. You can see me on the road in the spring. In the wintertime, it's indoor cycling. And, I'd love to do that. So
instead of asking what do you think Rhode Island's best known for, since I asked that the last time I had you on, my alternate, now that I asked for whenever I have somebody around for the second time, we have a lot of things that people misconceive about our state. For one, we get confused for being in New York instead of actually being where we are. I just want to ask, in your opinion, what do you think is the biggest misconception people have about our state, whether it's people that are not from here or just in general?
They call it the state of corruption. And I can't disagree with that. Certainly when I moved here more than 27 years ago, someone said to me, because I practice criminal law down in DC, they would go, "Oh, you're headed to the right state." And I thought, how could someplace be more corrupt than Washington, DC? And yet I came here, and Governor Dupree at that time had just been arrested for taking a bribe, and certainly Buddy Cienki. So, but I think that there's a lot of really good people here. And I want people to know that there are genuine, family orientated. We have wonderful restaurants. I mean, I think Johnson and Wales is an outstanding university. We've got great universities from Rick to URI to Brown to Providence College. I mean, the amount of higher education opportunities here for our students, our residents, to come here and to see, and the beautiful storied landscape. I tell everybody, we were really the first state, the first colony that went against British rule, and it was about their policies, and we burned the Gatsby. So we were the first state. People think of the Boston Tea Party. No, it was the burning of the Gatsby. So I think that wonderful independent spirit. Roger Williams wanted a place where people could, have any religion. So the libertarian bent here, I want people to remember that wonderful history that we have here. But really the people, the smallness that people know each other. And you talk about 6 degrees of separation in other areas. Well, I always say Rhode Island, it's 2 degrees of separation because you know somebody that knows somebody. And that can be, very beneficial. I think to some extent, maybe that's the reason why people say the state of corruption, because everybody knows everybody. And hey, I know a guy, I know a guy. Well, I know a guy can also be a good thing because it's neighbors helping each other. I love it here. I've raised my children here. I just think it is a beautiful state. And that's why I do what I do, because I believe that there's always a better way. And a one-party state doesn't help anybody. I believe that when you talk about ideas and you don't shut down the other side, it's always great. So I think that I want people to know that Rhode Island is beautiful. I love it here. I think it's just a great state.
It absolutely is, and it's part of the reason why I'm glad I didn't end up going to college out of state, and I'm at Rick instead of going out of state. And all those all those Rhode Island colleges you mentioned all ended up being on my Common App list, and I was like, I didn't really dive into out of state, but I'm glad I didn't. Miss Cienki, I want to thank you so much for coming on again. It's been great to have you on.
Yeah, it's been great having you, and I'm glad you're here too. You having known you for a couple of years, I just love to watch your growth. I can't wait to see you on a major news or writing for a major newspaper because it's going to be great. And I can say I knew him when.
Thanks. That means a lot. And that's the goal at the end of the day. Thank you for watching this episode of Ray-ality TV. If you want to see future episodes as soon as they're posted on this channel or the Anchor TV Rick channel, please click those subscribe buttons down below and the post notification bells. If you want to read the political profiles version, you can see this one, future ones and prior ones on anchorweb.org. I'm Raymond Vicari. I'll see you in the next episode.